In this video, we're going to take a look at a few of the most common pen and ink drawing techniques, and these include hatching, cross-hatching, using random lines, and stippling. So let's take a look at each one individually, starting with hatching. For each one of these techniques, we're going to draw a sphere. Because a sphere is a rounded three-dimensional form, it'll allow us to create gradations or slow changes in value from dark to light. With hatching, we're going to create uniform lines. Generally, these lines go in the same direction, although sometimes these lines can change direction and follow the cross contours of the object that's being drawn. In this case, we're just going to create horizontal lines. For any subject that you draw, you should always consider the light source. In this case, the light source is originating from the upper left-hand side. This means the value will be darker on the lower right portion of the sphere. To make the value appear darker, we'll add more horizontal lines. By placing lines in between the original lines that we drew, the value is perceived as being darker. The white space of the paper will play an important role. Balancing the amount of black lines and the white paper that is allowed to show through will allow us to create grays. So to review, for hatching, the lines flow in a unified direction. The lines generally do not cross over each other, and the value is adjusted by the spacing of lines. The next technique we'll talk about is cross-hatching. Here again, we'll use cross-hatching to determine the form and the illusion of the light source in the image. Cross-hatching will begin just as hatching did by creating horizontal lines. Just like with cross-hatching, these lines do not have to be horizontal or vertical or even diagonal. They may flow over the cross contours of the object. Next, we'll create additional lines over the top of the horizontal lines. The greater the frequency of lines that are added, the darker the value becomes. Here again, our light source is originating from the upper left-hand corner. This means the lower right portion of the sphere will be darker in value. This means that more lines will be created in these areas, and there will be a greater frequency of crossing over. With each layer of lines that are added to the drawing, the direction changes. We'll continue the cross-hatching pattern in the cast shadow underneath the sphere. Vertical lines are created, and these are followed by additional applications of lines. Again, the greater the frequency of lines, the darker the perceived value. So to review cross-hatching, lines cross over each other, and the greater frequency of lines produces darker values. The third technique we'll talk about is using random lines or squiggly lines. Here again, we'll consider the light source, which is originating from the upper left-hand corner. This means the value will be darker in the bottom right portion of the sphere. With random lines, we'll be very loose with our marks. We can create lines that go in various directions, random directions. The greater the frequency that these lines cross over each other, the darker the perceived value. This is a great technique for creating the illusion of texture. Of the four techniques, using random lines is definitely the quickest way to build up value in a drawing. Here again, we'll add a cast shadow underneath the sphere. So to review random lines, the lines will cross over each other, and like with cross-hatching, the greater the frequency of lines, the darker the value. The fourth technique we'll discuss is called stippling. Stippling occurs when small countless dots are added to a drawing in order to create the value range. The closer the dots are made to each other, the darker the perceived value. Just like the other three examples, we'll consider the light source. And here again, in this fourth example, the light is originating from the upper left-hand side. This means the value will be darker in the lower right portion of the sphere. To create this illusion, we'll add more dots with a greater frequency of dots in the lower right-hand portion of the sphere. The closer these dots are to one another, the darker the perceived value. Of the 4 techniques, stippling definitely takes the longest amount of time to accomplish. However, it gives the artist the greatest control over the range of value. Slow gradations or changes in value are easily accomplished using this technique. So to review stippling, small dots are used to create the illusion of value. The greater the frequency of dots, the darker the value. No matter what pen and ink technique you choose to use, it's best practice to pick a technique and stick with it throughout the entire drawing to create harmony and unity in the piece. I hope this short demonstration has helped you in the decision-making process of what you might choose to use in your own pen and ink drawings. If you enjoyed this video and you're ready to learn more, why not check out 4 video courses, live instruction, and over 6,000 minutes of art instruction, which include ebooks, live lessons, lesson plans, and more. Just click on the button to learn more now.